Alright, so we are going to talk about customer segments. The first important customer segment is the mass market. This is actually what everyone is targeting. So you are actually creating a product that most of the people need and they are actually buying from you. Then the second market will be actually the opposite of mass market, which is niche market. This particular market has a certain specific need, and if you actually find it, you are most probably going to be the sole provider of it. So niche market is also very interesting, but it is characterized by a lot of specialties and a lot of different players, because different players will specialize in different niche. Third is actually segmented. That means I'm actually a single entity, but actually cater to different types of customers. For example, banks. Banks, they have private banking that is actually catering for those who have high networks, but at the same time they might have the commercial arm that's catering for normal people. So different segments, you actually need to actually handle them differently. So this of course creates different structures and then other relationships in the business model canvas. Then the fourth one is actually diversify. So just now the bank, they actually cater two different groups, but both of these people, they also need the services from the bank, which is banking. But diversify is actually the kind of the segmentation that, for example, Amazon, they are actually an e-retailer, but at the same time they also have another service which is actually an infrastructure service for IT people or IT companies. So if you look at it, right, one is actually B2B, one is B2C. So this is what we call diversify, because they serve two totally different customer segments. Last but not least is actually multi-sided platforms. Multi-sided platform is actually very interesting, even though they are very close to diversified, but the only difference is that diversified ones, right, these two segments doesn't really interrelate with each other. Because for example, if one day Amazon loses popularity, it will not directly impact to the Amazon cloud services that they have. Or even the other way around is true also. But if we look at platforms like, for example, Google, if there's one day Google's free user that's used their search actually reduce, their customer that is going to pay for the advertisement will also reduce. Because this is what we call multi-sided platforms. They cater to two different kinds of customers, but these two customers, right, interrelate to each other. Because without the advertisers, Google cannot actually provide free search services. And then without the crowd that they have, advertisers will not buy the ads to actually advertise. So this is what we call multi-sided platform, and this is actually very important for you guys to differentiate. Alright, next we are going to move to value proposition. Value proposition is a very big topic. There's a total 11 subtopics inside, so please bear with me. First is actually newness. Newness is actually producing something that no one's seen before, and it's actually something that's so wow that is amazing. So in the group that I'm with, we refer to this as being first. For example, iPhone is actually the first phone that is actually being first, that you could actually use it as a phone, you can use it as a camera, and at the same time you can use it as a music player, and at the same time you can use it to do computing. That is a first. And this one, even though it's R&D intensive, but it will actually give you certain lead time before the market catches up to you. So it is actually very lucrative but R&D intensive. The second value proposition is performance. So performance is that how do you perform better? In the PC market, this is actually the indicator. How could you actually produce something that is better than the competitor? This is the second value proposition, which is performance. The third is customization. So a lot of people, they have certain special need. How do you customize the thing to their need? So the company that I'm working with actually does a lot of customization. The current business model is that we do a lot of customization to actually fit the client's need. So this is what we have. Then the fourth is actually getting the job done. So for some people, they just need something there for it to be done. For example, actually a lot of airlines, right, they actually use Rolls-Royce service, and Rolls-Royce actually charge airlines per hour for their engine running. So airlines don't need to actually think about the engine maintenance. Rolls-Royce will service them. Airlines just focus on what they do best, flying people to other places. Rolls-Royce will actually maintain the engine. So this is what we call getting the job done, because all the businesses, there's certain job that need to be done. The next is actually design. So a lot of people, they buy good designs because that is actually what they think it is good. If you ask why people buy certain products, like for example Apple products or Muji products, they will actually answer you because of the design. The next is actually the brand and status. So certain people buy certain things because they believe in the brand, or actually they believe in the status. Like there are some people in my life that they buy Apple, it's not because they think that Apple will help them. It's just that Apple iPhone, it seems like to be a symbol of status that they have a good taste and they can afford it. So that is also a status, that's why they buy. The next will be price. People buy certain thing because it's the same quality but it has cheaper price. So AirAsia is actually having this kind of value proposition. They have same quality but way cheaper price. But of course, this current market has also more competition. That's why AirAsia, they also have brand also. The next is cost reduction. After buying the product, it actually reduces certain cost. So for example, EDS actually is a very classic example that if you engage with them, you don't actually need to have your own IT department. It reduces cost because these people, they are very good at managing their their IT. So it is, when you engage them, it actually reduces the cost. Next is actually risk reduction. Risk reduction is that when you buy Dell, you always, most of the time, you might actually just buy a year to 5 years of insurance. So this will actually help you reduce the risk of the investment that you have, that it will not work. Next is also accessibility. Accessibility is that it will actually help you be able to do things easier. Before this, you can't actually access it, but now you are able to access it due to certain new delivery feature and so on. So this can be said, like for example AirAsia. AirAsia actually provide the accessibility to the masses, because previously to fly you have to be quite rich in order to fly. Last but not least is actually convenience and usability. If something that you use is actually easier than the other one, most people will actually go for the easier way because it's easier to use and it's more usable. So this is why a lot of people, nowadays they tend to go to online, especially those that's in metropolitan areas, because it is easier to do it. You just order online, wait for it to come to your house. You don't actually need to go to the store and pick it up because nowadays it's very jammed, especially in Bangkok. So now you have it, value proposition, you have newness, you have performance, you have customization, you have getting the job done, you have design, you have brand or status, you have price, you have cost reduction, you have risk reduction, you have accessibility, and you have convenience or usability. So let's move to the next point. Alright, so now we are going to move to channels. So channels, right, is actually the way that the customer know about you, or actually how they evaluate your product, or actually how do they do the purchase, or actually how do you do the delivery, or actually how do you do the after sales service. So these channels, right, there's actually two major types of it. One is actually direct, one is indirect. And then from here, it will also be expanded to something that you own and something that you don't own. So for example, direct channels. So there will all of the direct channels will be owned by you. So for example, your sales force, your web sales, these are actually entities that is owned by you. But also for things that is owned by you, right, there's also another one which is actually indirect. So for example, your own stores is indirect, even though you're in control of the stores, but you also have a layer from your HQ. But if you have a sales force, the sales force is actually in away from your HQ, so you have better control of the experience. Then the next is actually the indirect, which will be actually the indirect owned by your partners. So for example, your partner stores or your wholesalers, these are the channels that you have to actually do all the activities that I have said just now, to create awareness, to let your customer evaluate your product. Third is to make the purchase. Fourth is to deliver the products if any. Fifth is for after sales service. So this is the channels. Next, we're going to move to customer relationships. Customer relationship is a little bit less complex. There's only 6 types of customer relationship. First is actually personal assistance. You will actually have a call center, or you will have a place where you can email, and then there will be someone to actually help you or assist you in your problems that you face. Second will be actually a level up of this, which is dedicated personal assistance. So for example, for private banking, they will actually assign an individual person that develops a relationship with the client for a long term. So this is actually quite intimate and quite high touch, which only applies to a lot of luxury industries. Next will be self-service. Self-service, right, is actually very common in places that, or in industries that is cost sensitive. For example, all those low-cost airlines, most of the things are actually self-service. You go to their website, you buy the tickets yourself, you go to the airport, you print the thing yourself, you tag the baggage yourself. The only time that you see people is when you actually put the baggage there. because they need to check and make sure that the things are okay. So self-service is very important for industry that is cost sensitive. Next, we'll move to automated services. Automated services is actually the upgraded version of self-service. What is the difference? The difference is that automated services will actually do some customization according to the user or the customer. For example, if you use Netflix, it will actually recommend certain movies to you based on your past histories. Or actually, if you go to Amazon, they will also recommend things based on what you have looked, or actually based on what you have bought before. So these are automated services that help boost sales with very intelligent systems. The fifth is actually communities. So communities, right, actually companies create communities so that communities can help each other. So this is actually very common for example, I think Microsoft has this TalkShow. TalkShow is actually a financial app that I use myself. They also have a very strong community there. So whenever someone has problems, someone actually suggests on how to do, and the community help each other. So this is actually one of the customer relationship that they have. Last but not least is co-creation. Co-creation means that you actually go to the customer side and engage your customer to create the product together, so that the product will actually be fitting to the customer and at the same time will be able to fit to most of the people. So this is co-creation. Business model generation, this book is actually a very fine example of co-creation, because the writers actually collaborated with a lot of people from a lot of countries in order to refine the idea to actually refine this book. So this is something that is very interesting because it gets companies closer to their customers. Up next is what most businesses are very interested, or entrepreneurs are very interested in, which is revenue streams. There's a total of 7 types of revenue stream. The first is asset sale. So when you have certain thing, when you actually produce something that is actually an asset, when you are able to sell it, then it's actually the most common revenue stream that we have. Second is actually usage fee. Usage fee is only charged when you use certain things. A classic example of this is like hotel room, you only get charged when you use it. So this is usage fee. Third is actually subscription fee. So subscription fee is like you actually recur it every month. So for example, software as a service uses subscription fee. When you are actually subscribing to Netflix, that is also subscription fee. So this is actually very interesting, and this tends to be a very lucrative business model for the new business models. Third is actually lending, renting, or leasing. So the difference between the leasing, lending, and so on, and compared to the usage fee, so lending, renting, and leasing tends to be a longer period of time, whereas usage fee tends to be a shorter period of time. Fourth is actually licensing. Someone actually acquired the rights to use certain technology or certain pattern that you have. So that is actually licensing. The sixth is actually brokerage fee. Brokerage fee is that when you're actually doing certain transaction, they will charge you a certain cost. So for example, Visa or MasterCard, these are actually classic examples of brokerage fees. So of course, the stock market that actually you trade on, that kind of platform also charge you brokerage fees also. Last but not least is actually advertising. When you actually advertise, or when people advertise on your platform, that is how you actually are able to generate revenues. Then there's also pricing mechanisms. So how do you price your pricing mechanisms? There's actually 2 major ways of pricing mechanisms, which is fixed manual pricing and also dynamic pricing. So fixed manual pricing, there's around 4 of them. One is actually, it is fixed according to the product. Second is fixed according to the feature that you want. When you buy cars, the price is fixed for each different types of configurations that you want. Third is actually customer segment dependent. So it depends on which level that you are. For example, if you go to a more luxurious hotel, then they might actually have a more expensive pricing. When you go to a cheaper one, they might have a cheaper pricing, even though they are actually under the same company. So there's actually customer segment related pricing. Fourth is actually volume dependent. The more you buy, the cheaper you will get. So this is actually fixed also, even though they have certain variations, but the condition is that if you hit here, you get this price, that's all. The next one that we have is dynamic pricing. Dynamic pricing is according to negotiation. So the company that I work with, if you're actually on more the higher tier one, it tends to be more negotiation. Third will be actually yield management. Yield management will be, let's say for example, hotel rooms, or even maybe airlines. So they want to make sure that they have higher yields. So when it is starting, it tends to be quite cheap because they want to sell more. They want to sell more, but after they have break even, then they tend to sell more expensive because they are not going to make loss there. So they are making sure that the yield is there. Then the third is actually real-time pricing. So this depends on the supply and demand. So maybe for example, I think crops or even petrol. So this will be actually based on supply and demand, this kind of pricing. Last but not least will be auction. So auction will also be depending on the outcome of the bidding of the players in the auction market. So these are the pricing mechanisms and of course the types of revenues. Up next is key resources. Key resources for businesses, it is very important for them to have resources in order for them to be able to produce the goods. So there's 4 types of resource. First is actually physical resource, which may be the raw materials that you have or even the buildings that you have. So this is actually a physical resource. Second that you have is intellectual resource. So technologies, patents, know-hows, these are all intellectual resource. Certain industries, if you don't have the intellectual resource, you might not be able to go in. For example, pharmaceutical, intellectual resource is very important. Third is actually human. So for human intensive industries, maybe for example, IT industries or software industries, human is very important because one good programmer can really help you elevate your whole company a lot. So that is a very important key resource. Fourth is financial. So to have enough financial, it will actually help you tune the model to be able to help you cater for different customers. For example, Ericsson, right, when they're actually going to sell antenna, they actually have enough finance resource to let the customer just lease the whole thing and then pay back slowly. Because if the customer is going to just buy outright, most of the customers can't afford it. So this is financial resource and why it is important. Up next is key activities. This is very simple. There's only 3 types of key activities. First is actually production. That means you produce certain products. Second is problem solving. For example, if you're a consulting company, you help your clients solve their problems. Then that is actually a key activity. Third is the platform or network. You maintain the platform or network. For example, Lazada, they maintain the platform or network. For Amazon, they also maintain the platform or network. For Facebook, they also do the same thing. So these are the 3 main activities that it is categorized. Now we go to the next will be key partnerships. So key partnership will actually help you with 3 things. First is actually to optimize and to have the economies of scale. Because no one has all the resource. If you actually partner with someone else, you might be able to have better resource. Then second will be actually to reduce risk and uncertainty. For example, for certain companies, they might actually collaborate in one place and then compete in another. So if we look at consumer electronics, they actually form a consortium which is Blu-ray to actually reduce the risk to make sure that everyone will adopt this format. But they also compete in another place that they actually sell the same thing. So this is actually what they do to actually reduce risk and uncertainty. Last but not least is actually the acquisitions of a particular resource or activity. Because optimization is one thing. Another thing is that to be able to get the technology. So for example, if you are going to get an electric car now, or if you are going to start to produce an electric car now, there's one company that you will need to actually collaborate with or become partners with, which is Tesla, because they are licensing out their thing. So you need to partner with them in order for you to get this kind of key resources. So this is actually what you have for a key partnership. We are now at our last point, which is cost structure. In cost structure, there's 2 extreme ends. One is value driven, the other one is cost driven. So for companies in cost driven, it is very important for them to drive down the cost because most of the time their value proposition is low cost. So low cost airline is one of the examples. That's why they have a lot of self-service, they have a lot of automation, they also have a lot of outsourcing. Because if they can drive down their costs, then their value proposition of low cost can come true. On the other extreme end is luxury hotels and so on. They will actually bar no expenses because they want to make the ultimate experience to happen, because this is what the customer expects. So other companies, they just sit between these 2. And there's actually a few characteristics of cost structure. There are 4. First is actually fixed cost. So no matter how much you produce, the cost will be the same. So most of the companies that is in this will be actually manufacturing companies because rental, the machines, the maintenance are there. But of course, there's another one which is more on variable cost. So compared to manufacturing, which is, for example, music festival, the more you produce, the more you will need to pay, because they don't really have fixed costs. It's actually event based. So music festival. Third will be economies of scale. This kind of companies, the more they produce, the cheaper it becomes. So for example, I think in Amazon, the more they sell, I think the cheaper it becomes, because they have the economies of scale. Last but not least is something new that I learned from this book, which is economies of scope. So for example, in a company, they actually have a lot of different products or different subsidiaries or different services, but they can use the same marketing channel to actually sell it, because they have wide enough scope, but they use the same channel. So it will actually generate more impact. So this is what they call economies of scope. So this is the last piece, which is cost structure. With this, I end the whole business model canvas, and I hope that this helps you. Tune in next time to listen about business patterns. You will need to make sure that you are familiar with the things that I have told you, because each of these actually interacts with each other. One changes will actually change another one. Then you will be able to understand what I will actually present next in business model patterns or business patterns. So see you next time. Goodbye.